what I'm going to talk about is add in another concept of replicability, which is thinking about this in terms of external validity. So one thing is to be able to replicate something in the laboratory area. One thing is to be able to replicate it with whatever tools you're using. Another thing is, does it actually replicate in the outcome space that you care about? And I'll start with a warning. So this is from a paper that's currently under review, where we just simply asked people in a bunch of these various tools in which people get respondents, how much do the respondents actually use these various services, frequency of hours spent on these types of sites. And you're going to see this is a lot of time responding. And of course, Prolific and mTurk and CR is a filtered version of Mechanical Turk. These are places where people are going to kind of work and do tasks. In earlier work, we'd also asked this on Qualtrics and other online panels, where you still had the majority of people spending several hours per week answering questions in various audiences. And so that should kind of baseline affect your understanding of the naivete and understanding of various respondents that may be used in online laboratory experiments or surveys in order to better understand the world. And I can move forward into kind of my main area of work, and I'll just kind of jump through different hoops on it. One is ad effectiveness. And this is from a paper that is going to be sent out soon. I apologize, I had to, at the last moment, cover the names of the companies that are in there. But the point is, we're looking at ad effectiveness in 50 brands, pretty big brands, but not crazy. And if you just go to the far left panel, mean brand impressions per household. So what we noticed is that we were doing observational work here, followed up by some laboratory work, and that on our observational data, the mean brand, the median brand, sorry, was hitting about 39 to 40 times for any household in our study. So we're looking at how much any individual ad is affecting people, but the average household was getting hit by 39 ads from a given brand. And so that's a lot of baseline exposure if you're trying to look at the marginal impact of a given ad. Work that we're doing right now in politics, we're looking at this kind of paradox about the ineffectiveness of advertising in some ways. But what we're going to report soon is that the average American, even though they consume very little news, is getting hit by more earned media. So even just containing on TV, they're getting hit by more actual just news than they are on ads, a lot more. And so if you're worried about the marginal effect, you have to worry about where people are coming from originally. And this really plays a lot into some really interesting research, which around vaccine hesitancy. Again, a lot of laboratory experiments in how you can shift people's minds on taking vaccines, but you have to put it into the context of the massive amount of understanding and thought people have already put into the process. I'll jump quickly into questions around market design, which I spend a lot of time on as well. This is a very common question. It's asking for confidence intervals, a very heavily replicated result that people are overconfident when they're answering this type of question, where they're trying to give their 80% range of when something's going to happen. Working with Dan Goldstein and others, we created a lot of user interfaces that can essentially just eliminate that type of error. People are even able to reproduce crazy distributions of numbers they saw and things like that. But then the question is who's right and who's wrong? We don't really know here. It depends on thinking a lot about under what context do we care about this type of interaction or this type of thought process about confidence. Surely the type of work we're doing is making people concentrate, helping with the user interface. And at the end of the day, we looked at a simple question which said, how are people making money effectively? And basically, the short of it is that people who understood the user interface and actually made the most cost-effective trade for any trade they were doing were making more money than other people, because the vast majority of people weren't even doing the trade properly. They were below the 45-degree line. It means here that they are at any given time purchasing the exact same asset for more money than they could have if they fully understood the interface. We test these things in lab. We taught people too well. People are much quicker and lazier, busier in the real world, and actually continue to make mistakes, which we are able to prove over and over again were effective in a laboratory setting. I'll jump quickly to public opinion. This is a really cool table on a paper by John Krosnick. And what I really love about it is that this kind of shows in the opposite direction. He used this table, specifically the fourth line of data to show, hey, the errors on these non-probability internet samples are 1 to 2 percentage points higher than if you use probability samples. This is saying if you go on the internet and you get people coming from panels, you're not going to get as accurate in describing basically census data as you do on telephones. Interesting, meaningful, maybe. But the point being is that 1 to 2 percentage points is actually not that bad for a lot of things people care about, and actually is well within the range that most people would accept for something that was a lot cheaper. And there's a lot of questions that go into public opinion where there's no underlying value. So it's very tricky to kind of understand what a few percentage points really mean, especially when you start kind of comparing. Even a bunch of really hardcore ground truth has a lot of error when it comes to, or differences when it comes to sentiment. And so if you move away from questions like what's your age, gender, marriage status, to questions of what you care about in public policy, well, people don't have very stable opinions. And so to understand what that means in externally valid state is super tricky. We know that people love infrastructure and basically the democratic agenda. We know that the vote's a lot tighter than that when people go out and vote. And so it's a question of maybe people are answering this question truthfully. Maybe we actually have a very replicable thing, but maybe it doesn't translate for various reasons that we're still trying to learn. And I'll leave you with one more thought, which is that there's a lot of studies about the effect of news, and people want to understand how much does being treated with news affect your baseline public opinion. And we can replicate over and over and over again people saying that somewhere around 35 to 40% of people say they're regular Fox News viewers. But what the bottom line here shows is that number one, about 14% of people ever consume Fox News for a 6-minute spell in a given month. And so we can replicate in polling and in laboratory people claiming to be Fox News viewers, but they're actually not if you look at the data. And so it causes all sorts of questions about what does it mean when people who watch Fox News are different than people who don't watch Fox News. And we can go into that later, but the point being is some questions are just too hard. And so we need to use passive data, but also they fully replicate over and over again. It doesn't make them necessarily true. Thank you.
Very much. And I have to say, well, thank you for bringing your top bow tie game to these talks.
I thought it was a formal presentation.
It's very good. I like it.